Keanu Reeves was running late. His flight from Paris had landed an hour ago, and his usual laid-back demeanor was fraying under the pressure of LA traffic. He wasn't on his way to a glitzy red carpet premiere, nor to another production meeting for a blockbuster sequel. No cameras, no lights, this wasn't about the next big thing. He was headed to the far quieter halls of St. Mary's Children's Hospital, answering a letter that had found its way to him through an intricate web of goodwill and whispers. The letter had come from a 10-year-old girl named Lily, written in trembling handwriting. It wasn't just a fan letter, though she had plenty to say about her love for The Matrix and John Wick. What made it impossible to ignore was its simplicity, and its urgency. "I know you're busy, Mr. Keanu Reeves," Lily had written. "But my mom says you're the kindest person in the whole world, and I believe her. I wanted to ask for one thing, not an autograph, not a picture. I just wanted to meet you. My doctors say I have to be brave, but I don't feel brave anymore. Can you help me feel brave again?" Lily didn't mention in the letter that her cancer treatment wasn't working as hoped. She didn't mention how the mounting medical bills were swallowing her single mother's every waking thought. She simply asked for bravery, as if that alone could carry her through the next round of chemo. And Keanu, with his reputation for being equal parts grounded and generous, couldn't brush it off. As his car finally pulled into the hospital parking lot, he carried the letter folded in his jacket pocket, close to his chest. He had no idea what he was walking into, but something about this felt different. And if there was one thing Keanu Reeves had learned over the years, it was to follow his instincts. Inside the hospital, the mood was far from festive. It wasn't a place for glamour or stardom. Nurses moved quietly through the corridors, their expressions a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. Holiday decorations hung on the walls, but they felt more like placeholders for joy that wasn't quite there. A nurse named Maria greeted Keanu at the reception desk. She was in on the plan, and her face lit up with both surprise and gratitude when she saw the actor in his trademark unassuming black jacket and boots. "She doesn't know you're coming," Maria whispered as she led him toward the elevator. Her mother wanted to tell her, but she thought the surprise would be better. Keanu nodded, but his mind was already racing. What could he say to a young girl facing something this monumental? He'd met fans before, thousands of them, but this wasn't just about posing for a selfie or signing a DVD case. This was about offering something intangible, something meaningful. Could he really help her find the bravery she was looking for? When the elevator doors opened onto the pediatric oncology wing, he was met with a hum of quiet activity. A few kids were sitting in wheelchairs near the nurse's station, hooked up to 4 poles, their laughter almost defiant against the drabness of their surroundings. Then Maria pointed to a room at the far end of the hall. "She's in there," Maria said softly. "Her name's Lily." Keanu took a deep breath and stepped inside. The room was small but cheerful, decorated with handmade drawings of superheroes and colorful paper cranes strung across the walls. In the center of it all was Lily, sitting up in bed with a tablet in her lap. Her head was completely bald, her scalp pale and smooth, a stark contrast to her bright, mischievous eyes. When she looked up and saw who was standing in her doorway, her jaw dropped. "No way," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You're not real." Keanu smiled, stepping further into the room. "I've been told that before," he joked, pulling a chair up to her bedside. "But last I checked, I'm very real. Are you Lily?" Her nod was slow, as if she couldn't trust her own senses. "How do you know my name?" "I got your letter," Keanu said, pulling the now crumpled sheet of paper from his pocket and unfolding it carefully. "And I came because, well, it's not every day I get asked to help someone feel brave. That's kind of a big deal." For a moment, Lily just stared at him, her fingers clutching the edge of her blanket. Then, to Keanu's surprise, her eyes filled with tears. "You really came," she whispered. "You're really here." But just as Keanu began to respond, the door opened again. It was Lily's mother, carrying a tray of food from the hospital cafeteria. Her eyes widened when she saw the movie star sitting beside her daughter's bed, and the tray nearly slipped from her hands. "Oh my goodness," she gasped. You actually came." "Of course I did," Keanu said warmly, rising to take the tray from her hands and setting it on the bedside table. "Thank you for letting me visit." The woman's eyes welled up with tears, and she mouthed a silent thank you before excusing herself to give them privacy. As Keanu turned back to Lily, he noticed the glimmer of hope in her expression. It was small, like the first star appearing in a night sky, but it was there. And as they began to talk, about everything from her favorite books to her dreams of becoming a comic book artist, he felt something shift, not just in her, but in himself. Little did he know, this visit would mark the beginning of something much bigger than either of them could have imagined. As Keanu leaned back in his chair, he couldn't help but notice the stack of worn sketchbooks sitting on Lily's bedside table. They were slightly frayed around the edges, the kind of books that had been opened and closed 1,000 times. "Are these yours?" he asked, pointing to them. Lily nodded shyly, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her blanket. "Yeah. I draw when I feel scared. Or tired. Or just, like I need to be somewhere else for a while." "Can I see?" Keanu asked gently. He could sense her hesitation, so he added, "Only if you're okay with it." Lily bit her lip, but after a moment, she reached for the top sketchbook and handed it to him. "Okay," she whispered. "But don't laugh. They're not that good." Keanu flipped open the first page, and his breath caught. The drawings weren't just good, they were extraordinary. Pages and pages of superheroes and fantastical creatures filled the book, each one bursting with life and color. But what struck him most was that every hero seemed to share one defining feature: they were bald, just like Lily. "These are amazing," he said, his voice filled with genuine awe. "You're so talented. I love how your heroes, they're not afraid to be different." Lily's cheeks flushed pink, and she looked down, clearly unused to receiving such praise. "I guess I just wanted them to look like me," she said quietly. "I mean, when I started losing my hair, I felt like I didn't look like anyone else anymore. But then I thought, maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe it just makes me stronger." Keanu nodded, his admiration for her growing with each word. "You're right," he said. "It does make you stronger. And you know what else? I think these drawings prove you're already braver than you think." For the first time, Lily's smile reached her eyes. She seemed to relax a little, as if the weight of the world on her tiny shoulders had lifted, even if only for a moment. Then, as Keanu flipped through the pages, something caught his eye. Tucked into the middle of the sketchbook was a drawing of a familiar figure, a tall man in a black suit, holding a pencil like a sword, surrounded by a halo of comic book-style action lines. "Wait a second," Keanu said, holding up the page. "Is this me?" Lily giggled, her first real laugh of the day. "Yeah. I call him the Kind Knight. He's a superhero who helps people when they're in trouble. Like, if someone's feeling scared or lonely, he shows up and makes them feel better." Keanu smiled, feeling both humbled and deeply moved. "Well, I have to say, this might be the coolest thing anyone's ever drawn of me. I'm honored." "Really?" Lily's eyes widened. "You mean it?" "Absolutely," Keanu said. "In fact," he paused, an idea forming in his mind. "How about this? You keep drawing your heroes, and I'll help you turn them into a real comic book. We can work on it together." Lily gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "You mean, like, an actual comic? That people can read?" "Why not?" Keanu said, leaning forward. "You've got the talent, and I've got a few connections. We could make it happen. What do you think?" For a moment, Lily was speechless. Then, tears began to stream down her face, not the kind of tears born of sadness or fear, but the kind that came from feeling seen, from feeling like her dreams were possible. "I'd love that," she whispered. But just as the room was filled with this newfound hope, a soft knock interrupted the moment. It was Maria, the nurse who had brought Keanu up to the room. Her expression was apologetic but urgent. "Sorry to interrupt," Maria said, stepping inside. "Lily, sweetheart, it's time for your treatment." The light in Lily's eyes dimmed slightly, and she gave a small nod. "Okay," she said, her voice quiet. Keanu watched as Maria began preparing the four-line, her movements practiced and efficient. But he could see the tension in Lily's shoulders, the way her small hands gripped the edge of the blanket. "Hey," he said softly, leaning closer to her. "Can I stay with you while they do this? If that's okay with you." Lily hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah. I'd like that." So Keanu stayed. He held her hand, talked to her about everything and nothing, about his favorite books, his favorite dog, of course it was the one from John Wick, and the time he accidentally spilled coffee on a director during a big meeting. And through it all, Lily stayed calm. Brave, even. By the time the treatment was over, she looked tired but grateful. "Thanks for staying," she murmured, her eyelids drooping. "Anytime," Keanu said softly. "I meant it, Lily. You're not alone in this." As she drifted off to sleep, Keanu found himself sitting quietly in the chair beside her bed, staring at the pages of her sketchbook. Something about her story had gotten under his skin, and he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end of their connection. Little did he know, this wasn't just a fleeting visit. This was the beginning of a journey that would change both their lives forever. Keanu didn't leave right away. Even after Lily had fallen asleep, her tiny hand clutching the corner of her blanket, he sat there for a while, lost in thought. The quiet hum of the hospital room and the soft beeping of the machines seemed almost meditative. He glanced again at her sketchbook, lingering on the vibrant, heroic figures she had drawn, their bald heads shining like crowns. They weren't just superheroes, they were symbols of resilience, courage, and hope. Finally, he stood, careful not to wake her. As he made his way to the hallway, he found Lily's mother, Sarah, sitting on a bench just outside the room. She looked exhausted, her face lined with worry, but when she saw Keanu, she smiled faintly. "She hasn't smiled like that in weeks," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you. I don't know how to explain it, but you gave her something tonight that none of us could." Keanu shook his head humbly. "She gave me something too. Your daughter's incredible. She's got this strength, this light. I see it in her drawings. She's going to do amazing things one day." Sarah's smile faltered, and she looked down at her hands. "I hope so," she murmured. "I really do. But right now, all I can think about is keeping her alive." Keanu could hear the strain in her voice, the way it cracked under the weight of her unspoken fears. He hesitated, not wanting to pry, but he couldn't ignore the emotion in her words. Is there something I can do to help?" he asked gently. Sarah sighed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I don't know. The treatments are so expensive, and even with insurance, the bills just keep piling up. I've already sold my car, taken a second job, but it still doesn't feel like enough. And now the doctors are saying we might need to try an experimental treatment if this round doesn't work. It's not covered by insurance," and her voice broke, and she quickly wiped her eyes. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to unload all that on you. You've already done so much just by being here." Keanu placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to apologize. You're just doing what any parent would, fighting for your kid." He paused, his mind racing. "Let me think about it. Maybe there's a way I can help." Sarah looked at him, her eyes filled with both gratitude and hesitation. "You've already given her so much hope," she said softly. "That's more than enough." But as Keanu left the hospital that night, her words stayed with him. More than enough. Not to him. Not when he knew there was more he could do. The next morning, Keanu sat in his modest home office, the sunlight streaming through the windows. On his desk were Lily's drawings, which Sarah had let him borrow. As he flipped through them again, he felt a surge of determination. Lily wasn't just a kid battling cancer, she was an artist, a dreamer, a fighter. She deserved a chance, not just to survive, but to thrive. Keanu reached for his phone. He had spent decades in Hollywood, building not just a career but a network of friends, colleagues, and admirers who respected him as much for his kindness as for his talent. If ever there was a time to call in a favor, it was now. The first call he made was to his lawyer. "I want to set up a fund," he explained. "Something that can cover Lily's treatment, and if there's extra, we'll use it to help other kids in similar situations." The lawyer was quick to agree, and by the end of the day, the paperwork was in motion. Keanu also reached out to a trusted friend who worked in publishing. "I've got an idea for a project," he said. "It's a comic book, but the real goal is to shine a spotlight on a little girl who's fighting the bravest battle I've ever seen." His friend was intrigued. "Send me the drawings," she said. "Let's make it happen." But Keanu wasn't done yet. That evening, he made an anonymous donation to the hospital, large enough to cover not just Lily's immediate treatment but also the experimental therapy her doctors had mentioned. He didn't want Sarah to find out until the time was right, he wanted her to focus on Lily, not on worrying about money. A few days later, Keanu returned to the hospital. This time, he came bearing gifts, a new set of professional-grade sketchbooks, colored pencils, and markers. When he walked into Lily's room, her face lit up. "You came back," she exclaimed, her voice full of joy. "Of course I did," Keanu said, grinning as he set the supplies on her bedside table. "I told you, we've got a comic book to make, remember?" Lily's eyes widened as she looked at the art supplies. "These are for me." "Only if you promise to use them," Keanu teased. "I want to see more heroes. More adventures." "Deal. Deal." Lily said, already reaching for a pencil. Over the next hour, they worked side by side, brainstorming ideas for their comic book. Lily's imagination was boundless, and Keanu found himself swept up in her enthusiasm. For a while, it was easy to forget the sterile hospital room, the foreline in her arm, and the weight of her illness. They were just two creative minds, dreaming up a world where bravery and kindness always won. But as they laughed and sketched, Sarah stood quietly in the doorway, watching. She didn't say a word, but the look on her face said everything: gratitude, hope, and maybe, just maybe, the faintest glimmer of belief that things could turn around. And turn around they would, but not in a way anyone could have predicted. The following week, Keanu's quiet efforts behind the scenes began to pick up speed. Every spare moment he had between filming commitments and meetings was spent working on Lily's project and planning ways to ensure her future. He didn't tell her or her mother what he was doing, he wanted it to be a surprise, but he couldn't shake the sense of urgency. Time felt like an unpredictable thing, and he wanted to act quickly. Meanwhile, Lily's progress was slow but steady. The hospital staff noticed her newfound spark, a brightness in her eyes that had been missing for months. Nurses would peek into her room and see her drawing furiously, her bald head bent low over her sketchbook, her tongue sticking out in concentration. And almost always, Keanu was by her side, either sketching with her or brainstorming names for new superheroes. One afternoon, as Lily was adding the finishing touches to a new character, a bald superhero with wings made of light, Keanu leaned over and asked, "What's her name?" Lily tapped her pencil against her chin, thinking hard. I think I'll call her Beacon. She lights the way for people who are lost." "Beacon," Keanu repeated, smiling. "I like that. She's inspiring." "She's not afraid of the dark," Lily added, her voice soft but firm. "Because she is the light." Keanu paused, moved by the depth of Lily's words. You know, I think you're a bit of a beacon yourself, he said. You're lighting the way for a lot of people, even me. Lily giggled, clearly embarrassed, but her smile stretched wide. You're just saying that. Nope, Keanu said, his tone serious but kind. I mean it. Later that evening, Keanu met with Sarah in a quiet corner of the hospital cafeteria. She had asked to speak with him privately, and he could tell by her expression that something was on her mind. I just wanted to say thank you again, Sarah began, her hands wrapped around a lukewarm cup of coffee. I don't know what we did to deserve this, but, you've made such a difference for Lily. She talks about you all the time. You've given her something to look forward to, something to hold on to. Keanu nodded, his expression thoughtful. She's given me something too, he said. Her courage, it's incredible. I don't know if she realizes how much she inspires everyone around her. Sarah smiled faintly but then hesitated, her eyes clouding with worry. I know she's doing better emotionally, but the doctors, they're still cautious. They're saying the next phase of treatment is critical, and honestly, I don't know how I'm going to afford it. Keanu held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. Sarah, he said gently, I don't want you to worry about that anymore. It's taken care of. She blinked, confused. What do you mean? I made a donation to the hospital, he explained, his tone matter-of-fact. It's anonymous, so don't go telling anyone, but it's enough to cover Lily's treatment, including the experimental therapy. You focus on being there for her. Let me handle the rest. For a moment, Sarah just stared at him, her lips parting as if to speak but no words coming out. When she finally found her voice, it was shaky with emotion. I don't know what to say. Keanu, I can't let you. You can, he said firmly but kindly. And you will. This isn't about me. It's about Lily. She's got a future ahead of her, and I want to make sure she gets the chance to live it. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes, and she quickly wiped them away. You're an angel, she whispered. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to, Keanu said, smiling. Just promise me you'll let Lily keep drawing. She's got a gift, and I can't wait to see where it takes her. The next day, Keanu arrived at the hospital with more good news. He had finalized the plans for their comic book project, and he couldn't wait to share them with Lily. Okay, here's the deal, he told her as they sat together in her room. I showed some of your drawings to a friend of mine, and they loved them. We're going to publish your comic book, not just for us, but for the world. People are going to read your stories, Lily. They're going to see your heroes. Lily's jaw dropped. Wait, like, real people? Like, in a bookstore? Exactly, Keanu said, grinning. And here's the best part, all the money we make from the comic will go to helping kids like you. It's going to be called the Bravery Fund. How does that sound? Lily's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, she couldn't speak. Then she threw her arms around Keanu, hugging him as tightly as her small frame could manage. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much. Keanu hugged her back, his own eyes misting over. You're the one doing the hard work, kiddo, he said softly. I'm just here to cheer you on. As the days turned into weeks, the hospital buzzed with excitement. News of Lily's comic book project spread, and soon, other kids in the pediatric ward were inspired to create their own art. Keanu visited as often as he could, encouraging them and even hosting impromptu drawing sessions. Lily, now the unofficial leader of this creative movement, seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. But just as everything seemed to be falling into place, an unexpected twist emerged, one that would test everyone's resolve. Things had been going so well that no one saw the setback coming. Lily had been responding well to her treatments, and the comic book project had given her a new sense of purpose. But cancer has a way of throwing curveballs, and one late afternoon, during a routine checkup, the doctors delivered news that made Sarah's heart sink. "Lily's numbers aren't where we'd hoped they'd be," Dr. Patel said, his tone gentle but serious. "Her body's not responding to the current treatment as strongly as we'd like. We still have the experimental therapy as an option, and I believe it could make a significant difference, but it's not without risks." Sarah's hands trembled as she listened. She felt as though she'd been dropped into a free fall with no parachute. Risks? What kind of risks? "The treatment is more aggressive," Dr. Patel explained. "It could lead to side effects, fatigue, nausea, a weakened immune system, but it's also one of our best chances to fight this." Sarah nodded numbly. "And, if we don't try it?" Dr. Patel hesitated, but his eyes were filled with compassion. "Then we'd continue with the current approach, but I'll be honest, we'd be running out of time." Sarah's knees felt weak, and she lowered herself into a chair. She thought of Lily, of her boundless creativity, her bravery, her bright laugh that had begun to echo through the hospital halls again. The idea of losing that light was unbearable. "Let me talk to her," Sarah said finally. "She deserves to know." That evening, Sarah sat with Lily in her hospital room, holding her daughter's small hand in hers. "Sweetheart, we need to talk," she began, trying to keep her voice steady. Lily, ever perceptive, tilted her head and frowned. "What's wrong, Mom?" Sarah took a deep breath. "The doctors think it's time to try something new, a stronger treatment. It's called experimental therapy. It could help a lot, but it might also make you feel a little worse before it makes you feel better." Lily was quiet for a moment, her gaze dropping to her lap. Then she looked up and asked the question that had clearly been on her mind. "Does this mean I'm getting worse?" Sarah's throat tightened, and tears pricked the corners of her eyes. "It just means the medicine you're on now isn't working as well as we'd hoped. But this new treatment could help turn things around." Lily nodded slowly. Then, after a moment, she said something that surprised Sarah. "If it might help, I want to try it." Sarah blinked. "Are you sure? You don't have to decide right now, sweetie." "I'm sure," Lily said, her voice firm despite the tremor in it. "I'm not ready to stop fighting." Sarah pulled her daughter into a tight embrace, her tears falling freely now. "You're so brave," she whispered. So brave." Just then, there was a knock at the door. It was Keanu, holding 2 cups of hot chocolate and a bag of donuts. He'd been dropping by so frequently that the hospital staff had started joking that he was their newest employee. "Am I interrupting?" he asked, immediately sensing the heavy atmosphere in the room. "No," Lily said quickly, wiping her eyes. "Come in." Keanu set the hot chocolates on the bedside table and crouched down next to Lily's bed. "What's going on?" he asked gently. Lily explained everything, her words simple but steady. When she was finished, Keanu didn't say anything right away. He just looked at her, his expression a mixture of admiration and quiet resolve. "You know," he said finally, "there's a reason superheroes keep fighting, even when things get tough. It's because they believe in what they're fighting for. And you, Lily, you're a superhero if I've ever met one." Lily smiled faintly. "Do you think I can beat this?" "I know you can," Keanu said, his voice unwavering. "And I'll be right here with you, every step of the way." The next morning, the experimental treatment began. It wasn't easy. Lily's body struggled to adjust, and there were days when even sitting up in bed seemed like an impossible task. But through it all, Keanu kept his promise. He was there for every treatment, every tough day, every small victory. When Lily was too tired to draw, Keanu would sketch for her, copying her style as best he could. "You're way better than me," he'd say with a laugh, showing her his lopsided drawings of her superhero, Beacon. "But I think I'm improving." Lily would laugh weakly, but it was a laugh nonetheless, and that sound became a source of strength for everyone around her. One afternoon, as Lily dozed off after a particularly grueling treatment, Keanu found Sarah sitting in the hospital's rooftop garden. She was staring out at the horizon, her expression distant. "She's stronger than I am," Sarah said when Keanu approached. "I don't know how she does it." "She's strong because of you," Keanu said, sitting beside her. "She sees how hard you're fighting for her. That kind of love, it's powerful." Sarah turned to him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You've done so much for us already. I don't even know how to thank you." "You don't need to," Keanu said. "Just keep being there for her. That's all that matters." Sarah nodded, wiping away a tear. "She's been talking about finishing the comic book," she said with a faint smile. "Even on her worst days, it's what keeps her going. She says she wants to see it in bookstores, just like you promised." Keanu grinned. "She will. I'm making sure of it." And he wasn't exaggerating. Behind the scenes, the comic book was coming together beautifully. Keanu had enlisted some of the best colorists and letterers in the business, and they all worked pro bono, moved by Lily's story. The book was set to be released in just a few weeks, and Keanu couldn't wait to put a copy in Lily's hands. But first, they had to get through the toughest phase of her treatment. It was a battle that required every ounce of Lily's strength, and the unwavering support of everyone around her. The weeks that followed were some of the hardest yet. The experimental treatment took its toll on Lily, leaving her weak, nauseated, and often too tired to talk. The sparkle in her eyes, which had returned when Keanu first arrived, dimmed on some days, but it never completely disappeared. She was a fighter, and everyone around her could see it. Still, there were moments when even the bravest superheroes faltered. One such moment came during a particularly long treatment session. Lily sat quietly in her bed, staring out the window as the four dripped steadily beside her. She hadn't picked up her sketchbook in days, and the pile of art supplies on her table sat untouched. When Keanu walked in that afternoon, carrying a small box wrapped in brightly colored paper, he immediately noticed the change in her demeanor. "Hey, kiddo," he said, pulling up his usual chair. "How are you feeling today?" Lily shrugged. "Tired," she murmured. "And a little. I don't know. I guess I just feel like, what if all of this doesn't work?" Her voice was so quiet, Keanu had to lean closer to hear her. His heart ached at the vulnerability in her words, but he knew this was a moment that called for honesty, and hope. "You know," he said, resting his elbows on his knees, "I think it's okay to feel scared sometimes. Even superheroes get scared. But you don't have to do this alone. You've got your mom, the doctors, the nurses, and you've got me. We're all here to fight with you." Lily looked up at him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "But what if I'm not strong enough?" Keanu shook his head, his expression filled with gentle determination. "You are strong enough. And on the days when it feels too hard, you let us carry some of the weight. That's what teams are for." For a moment, Lily didn't say anything. Then she nodded, her small hand reaching out to grasp his. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll keep trying." "That's all anyone can ask," Keanu said, squeezing her hand. "Now, speaking of trying, I brought you something. It's a little surprise." He set the brightly wrapped box on her lap, and Lily's curiosity momentarily replaced her fatigue. She tore off the paper with trembling fingers, revealing a hardcover book. Her eyes widened when she saw the title embossed on the front, Beacon, A Hero's Journey. It's my comic book," she gasped, running her hands over the cover. "It's real." "Not just real," Keanu said, grinning. "It's printed, bound, and ready to hit shelves next week. You're officially a published author." Lily's face lit up, a smile breaking through the exhaustion that had clouded her features. She opened the book, flipping through the pages filled with her drawings, her characters, her stories. The professional colorists and letterers had brought her work to life in a way that felt almost magical. "This is amazing," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you." "No," Keanu said, shaking his head. "Thank you. You created this. You dreamed it up, and you made it happen. I just helped a little." Lily hugged the book to her chest, her eyes brimming with tears. "Do you think other kids will like it?" "I think they're going to love it," Keanu said confidently. "And you know what else? Every copy we sell is going to help other kids who are fighting their own battles. Just like you." Lily's eyes widened. "Really?" "Really," Keanu said. "We're calling it the Bravery Fund. All the proceeds from the book are going to support kids who need medical treatment or just a little extra hope. You're not just a superhero, Lily, you're a real-life hero." The weight of his words sank in, and for the first time in days, Lily's smile returned in full force. She picked up her sketchbook and grabbed a pencil, her movements slow but determined. "What are you working on?" Keanu asked, leaning closer. "A new hero," Lily said, her voice steady. "Someone who helps people when they feel scared. Kind of like you." Keanu laughed softly, his heart full. "Well, I can't wait to meet them." The next few days brought a noticeable shift in Lily's spirits. The comic book had reignited her sense of purpose, and even on the toughest days, she found the energy to draw. Nurses, doctors, and even other patients began stopping by her room to see her work, and the buzz about her comic grew louder with each passing day. But it wasn't just Lily who was inspired. Her story was spreading far beyond the hospital walls. News outlets picked up the story of a little girl and her Hollywood friend who had turned her art into a movement. Social media lit up with posts about Lily's bravery and Keanu's kindness, and soon, pre-orders for the comic book were flooding in. One morning, as Keanu walked into the hospital, he was met by Maria, the nurse who had first introduced him to Lily. She was beaming. "You're not going to believe this," she said, holding up a tablet. "The comic book hasn't even hit shelves yet, and it's already a bestseller. People are calling in from all over the country, asking how they can help." Keanu grinned, his heart swelling with pride. "That's amazing," he said. "But the real star here is Lily. She's the one who made this happen." Maria nodded, her expression softening. "She's incredible, isn't she? Anne. I thought you should know, her latest test results just came back. The experimental treatment is starting to work. It's early, but the doctors are optimistic." Keanu froze, the words sinking in. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," Maria said, her eyes glistening. "She's not out of the woods yet, but this is the best news we've had in a while." For a moment, Keanu couldn't speak. Then he let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, a smile breaking across his face. "That's the best thing I've heard all day." "Go tell her," Maria said, grinning. "I think she could use the good news." Keanu didn't need to be told twice. He practically sprinted down the hall to Lily's room, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and relief. When he opened the door, Lily was sitting up in bed, working on yet another drawing. She looked up and smiled when she saw him. "You're here early," she said. "What's up?" Keanu sat down beside her, his grin unstoppable. "I've got some news," he said, leaning in conspiratorially. "The doctors just got your latest test results." Lily's pencil paused mid-stroke. "What did they say?" "They said," Keanu's voice softened, his eyes meeting hers. "They said it's working, Lily. The treatment is working." For a moment, Lily just stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then her lips trembled, and tears spilled down her cheeks. "Really?" she whispered. "I'm getting better." "You're getting better," Keanu confirmed, his voice thick with emotion. "You're beating this. Lily's smile was like the sun breaking through the clouds, and for the first time in a long time, she looked not just hopeful, but certain. And as Keanu sat with her, celebrating this hard-won victory, he couldn't help but feel that the best chapters of Lily's story were still to come. The news of Lily's progress spread quickly through the hospital, lifting the spirits of everyone who had followed her journey. Nurses, doctors, and even fellow patients stopped by her room to congratulate her, and for the first time in months, there was real talk of a future beyond hospital walls. Lily was thrilled, of course, but what excited her the most wasn't just her improving health, it was the idea that her comic book would soon be out in the world, helping other kids like her. "I want them to feel brave," she told Keanu one afternoon as they worked on a new character together. "Like, even if things feel really scary, they can still be a hero." "And they will," Keanu assured her, his pencil moving across the page. "When they see your story, they'll know they're not alone." As they talked, Keanu sketched a clumsy-looking sidekick character. He gave it floppy ears, a crooked smile, and a comically oversized cape. Lily burst out laughing when she saw it. "What is that supposed to be?" she asked, giggling. "This," Keanu said, pointing to the sketch, "is the Brave Bunny. Every superhero needs a sidekick, right? And Brave Bunny always shows up when you least expect it, usually with snacks." Lily laughed so hard that tears sprang to her eyes. It was the kind of deep, unrestrained laughter that had been missing for too long, and Keanu couldn't help but smile. "You're ridiculous," she said, still giggling. "But I like it." "Good," Keanu said, grinning. "Because Brave Bunny is officially part of the team." As the comic book's release date approached, Keanu worked tirelessly to ensure that everything was perfect. He coordinated with the publishing team, approved marketing plans, and even filmed a special message to be included in the book's digital version. "This isn't just a comic book," he said in the video. "It's a celebration of courage, creativity, and the incredible power of hope. Lily's story has already inspired me, and I know it's going to inspire so many others." But Keanu wasn't the only one making preparations. Unbeknownst to Lily, the hospital staff and Sarah had been planning a special event to celebrate her progress and the launch of her comic. The idea had started as a small party in the pediatric ward, but as word spread, it quickly snowballed into something much bigger. On the morning of the big day, Lily woke up to find her room buzzing with activity. Balloons and streamers decorated the walls, and a giant poster of her comic book cover had been hung over her bed. Sarah stood by the door, beaming, while Maria and several other nurses helped set up a table filled with snacks and drinks. "What's going on?" Lily asked, blinking in surprise. "It's your launch party," Sarah said, kissing her daughter's forehead. "The doctors said you were feeling well enough for a little celebration, so we thought, why not make it a big one?" "But wait," Lily said, glancing around. "Where's Keanu? He's not missing this, is he?" As if on cue, the door swung open, and in walked Keanu, wearing a t-shirt with the words Team Beacon printed across the front. He was holding a box filled with copies of Lily's comic, each one freshly printed and ready to be shared. "Did someone say party?" he asked, grinning. Lily's face lit up. "You're here." "Of course I'm here," Keanu said, setting the box down on the table. "I wouldn't miss this for the world." He handed her one of the comics, and Lily held it in her hands as if it were made of gold. Seeing her name printed on the cover, alongside the words written and illustrated by Lily Matthews, made her eyes fill with tears. "This is so cool," she whispered, turning the pages. "I can't believe it's real." "It's more than real," Keanu said, crouching down beside her. "It's yours. And it's going to make a difference in so many people's lives." The party was nothing short of magical. Patients, families, and hospital staff gathered in the pediatric ward to celebrate Lily's incredible journey. Keanu helped hand out signed copies of the comic to the kids in the ward, and Lily even signed a few herself, her hand shaking slightly as she wrote her name in bold, proud letters. At one point, a little boy named Ethan, who was also undergoing treatment, approached Lily with his copy of the comic. His hair had begun to fall out from chemotherapy, and he clutched the book tightly to his chest. "Can I tell you something?" he asked shyly. "Sure," Lily said, smiling. "I was really scared about being in the hospital," Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But after reading your comic, I think, maybe I can be brave, too." Lily's eyes filled with tears, and she reached out to hug him. "You already are," she said. "And don't forget, you're not alone." Keanu watched the interaction from a few steps away, his heart full. This was the moment he had dreamed of, the moment when Lily's story would begin to ripple out into the world, touching lives and spreading hope. As the party wound down, Keanu pulled Sarah aside. "I've got one more surprise for Lily," he said, his tone conspiratorial. "But I'll need your help to pull it off." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "What kind of surprise?" "You'll see," Keanu said with a wink. The next morning, Lily woke up to find her hospital room transformed once again. This time, a projector had been set up at the foot of her bed, and Sarah stood nearby with a smile that suggested she was in on the secret. "What's going on now?" Lily asked, sitting up. "Just watch," Sarah said, gesturing to the screen. As the lights dimmed, a video began to play. It was a montage of kids and families from around the world, holding up signs that said things like "Thank you, Lily." And "You're our hero." Some of them were kids undergoing treatment, while others were readers who had pre-ordered her comic and been moved by her story. The video ended with a clip of Keanu, sitting in what appeared to be a movie studio. "Hey, Lily," he said, grinning at the camera. "Remember when I said your story was going to inspire people? Well, I think it's safe to say you're officially a superhero. Keep shining, kiddo. The world needs your light." When the video ended, Lily was speechless. She turned to her mom, then to Keanu, who had just walked into the room holding a stuffed version of Brave Bunny. "You guys did all this for me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Of course we did," Keanu said, handing her the stuffed bunny. "Because you're worth it." Lily hugged the toy tightly, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything." Keanu smiled, his own eyes misting over. "No," he said softly. "Thank you." Lily's comic book launch didn't just stay within the walls of the hospital, it began to ripple out across the country, and soon, the world. The first print run sold out within days, with proceeds flooding into the Bravery Fund that Keanu and Lily had set up. Social media buzzed with posts about Beacon, a hero's journey, and hashtags like #TeamBeacon and #BraveryFund began trending. The story of a little girl battling cancer while creating her own superhero inspired millions. Even Hollywood took notice. Celebrities started sharing photos of themselves holding Lily's comic, praising her creativity and courage. Some even donated to the fund, helping it grow into a national movement. But despite all the attention, Lily remained humble. "It's not about me," she told Keanu one afternoon during one of his visits. "It's about the kids. I want them to know they're not alone." "They do," Keanu assured her. "Because of you, they're starting to believe it." A few weeks after the launch, the Bravery Fund had its first big success story. Keanu received an email from a mother in Texas, whose son, Max, had been battling leukemia. Thanks to the fund, Max's family had been able to afford a new treatment that they hadn't thought possible before. The email read, "Dear Mr. Reeves and Lily, I don't even know how to begin to thank you. Max has been through so much, but when he read Lily's comic, it was like a switch flipped. He started saying, 'If Beacon can fight, so can I.' And now, thanks to the fund, we've been able to give him a chance at something we didn't dare to hope for, a cure. Please tell Lily she's changed our lives forever." When Keanu shared the message with Lily, her eyes lit up. "Max is getting better?" she asked, her voice filled with wonder. "He is," Keanu said. And it's because of you. Lily smiled, but her expression grew thoughtful. Do you think I could meet him someday? Like, after I get out of here? Keanu grinned. I think that can be arranged. Meanwhile, Lily's health continued to improve. The experimental treatment was working, and her doctors were cautiously optimistic. She's not out of the woods yet, Dr. Patel reminded Sarah during one of their meetings, but we're seeing progress, real, measurable progress. Sarah clung to those words like a lifeline. Every time Lily's energy returned, every time she laughed or picked up her sketchbook, it felt like another small victory. And yet, there were moments of doubt. Moments when Sarah would sit alone in the hospital chapel, her hands clasped tightly together, and silently plead for more time. But on those days, it was often Lily who lifted her spirits. Mom, Lily said one evening, noticing the worry etched on her mother's face. You don't have to be scared all the time. I'm not scared, Sarah replied automatically, but her voice betrayed her. Lily reached out and took her hand. It's okay if you are, she said. But you don't have to be scared for me. I've got this. And even if I don't, I've still got you. That's what matters. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes, and she pulled Lily into a gentle hug. You're my hero, you know that, she whispered. Lily grinned. Well, someone's gotta be. As Lily grew stronger, so did the Bravery Fund. Donations continued pouring in, allowing the fund to expand its reach. Families who had been struggling to afford treatments were now getting the help they needed, and the stories of hope and recovery began to multiply. One particularly moving story came from a girl named Sophia, who was the same age as Lily and had been inspired by Beacon, a hero's journey, to start drawing her own comic. She sent a letter to Lily, along with a few sketches of her characters, who were all based on real kids in her hospital. Lily read the letter aloud to Keanu during one of his visits, her voice full of excitement. She says, my superhero is called the listener. She doesn't fight bad guys with her fists, she listens to them and helps them feel better. I think you're like the listener, Lily, because your comic made me feel better when I was really sad. That's beautiful, Keanu said, his voice warm. You've inspired another artist. How does that feel? Kind of amazing, Lily admitted, her cheeks turning pink. Do you think I could write back to her? Absolutely, Keanu said. In fact, why don't we send her one of your signed comics? I think she'd love that. As Lily's life began to regain a sense of normalcy, Keanu started planning one final surprise. The Bravery Fund had been such a success that a charity event was being organized to celebrate its impact, and Keanu wanted Lily to be the guest of honor. The event, scheduled to take place in Los Angeles, would feature an art exhibit showcasing Lily's original drawings, along with works from other kids who had been inspired by her story. There would be speeches, performances, and even a few surprise celebrity appearances. But the highlight of the evening would be a moment that Keanu had been secretly planning for weeks. The day of the event arrived, and Lily, who had been discharged from the hospital just days earlier, was nervous but excited. Keanu had arranged for a car to pick her and Sarah up and bring them to the venue, where a red carpet had been rolled out, not for Hollywood stars, but for Lily and the other young artists whose work was being celebrated. When Lily stepped out of the car, she was greeted by a crowd of cheering supporters. Cameras flashed as reporters shouted her name, but Lily barely noticed. Her eyes were wide with wonder as she took in the scene. This is, all for me, she asked, looking up at Keanu, who had been waiting to greet her. For you, he said, offering her his arm. And for all the kids whose lives you've touched. As they walked down the carpet, Lily was greeted by fans young and old, many of whom held copies of her comic. One little girl, clutching a stuffed Brave Bunny, ran up to Lily and gave her a hug. You're my favorite superhero, she said, beaming. Lily's cheeks flushed, and she hugged the girl back. Thank you, she said softly. You're my hero too. Inside the venue, the art exhibit was nothing short of breathtaking. Lily's drawings were displayed on large panels, alongside stories from the kids who had been inspired by her work. Keanu watched as Lily moved through the crowd, her confidence growing with every interaction. When it was time for the speeches, Keanu took the stage first. He spoke about the power of hope, the importance of kindness, and the incredible impact one little girl had made on the world. "And now," he said, gesturing toward the side of the stage, "it's my honor to introduce the real hero of tonight's event. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lily Matthews." As Lily stepped onto the stage, the crowd erupted into applause. She looked out at the sea of smiling faces, her heart pounding, and for a moment, she didn't know what to say. Then she took a deep breath, clutching the microphone tightly. "I'm not really a superhero," she began, her voice shaking slightly. "I'm just a kid who was really scared. But I think, maybe being brave doesn't mean you're never scared. Maybe it just means you keep going anyway." The audience fell silent, hanging on her every word. "I made this comic because I wanted other kids to know they're not alone," Lily continued. "And now, because of all of you, we can help even more kids feel brave. So, thank you. For believing in me. And for believing in all of us." The applause that followed was thunderous, and as Lily looked over at Keanu, he gave her a small, proud nod. She had done it. She had become a beacon of light, and her journey was far from over. The charity event was an unforgettable success. By the end of the night, the Bravery Fund had raised more money than anyone could have imagined. Donations poured in from around the world, with supporters inspired by Lily's story and her message of hope. For Lily, it felt like a dream come true, but as Keanu reminded her, this was just the beginning. "Beacon's story is out there now," he said as they sat together after the event, eating slices of celebratory chocolate cake in the green room. "But the real heroes are the kids who see your comic and find their own bravery. You've started something, Lily, and I can't wait to see where it goes." Lily smiled, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Do you think we could make a sequel?" she asked. "Beacon still has so many adventures to go on." Keanu grinned. "I think that's a great idea. But for now, how about we celebrate this victory first?" The weeks following the event were a whirlwind for Lily. She and Sarah finally returned home after what felt like a lifetime in the hospital. For Lily, walking into her own room, her posters, her bed, her cozy little desk, was like stepping into a whole new world. "I missed this," she said, running her fingers along the spines of her books. "It feels normal." Sarah smiled, tears of joy in her eyes. "Normal sounds pretty good, doesn't it?" "Yeah," Lily said, turning to look at her mom. "But I think I'm ready for a new kind of normal. One where I'm not just a kid with cancer, but someone who gets to live her life." And live her life she did. Lily's health continued to improve, and while there were still regular checkups and cautious optimism from her doctors, she finally felt free to dream about the future. One afternoon, Keanu surprised Lily with a visit to an animation studio in Los Angeles. "I've got a surprise for you," he said as they walked through the doors. Lily's jaw dropped as they stepped into a massive room filled with artists, animators, and storyboards plastered across the walls. At the center of it all was a giant screen displaying a rough animation of none other than Beacon herself. "Wait," Lily said, her eyes wide. Is that my character?" "It sure is," Keanu said, grinning. "I might have made a few calls. How do you feel about turning Beacon, a hero's journey, into an animated short film?" Lily stared at him, completely speechless. "Are you serious?" she finally managed to squeak. "Dead serious," Keanu said. "The studio loved your story, and they want to bring it to life. You'll get to work with the animators, help write the script, and make sure Beacon's story is told exactly the way you want it to be." For a moment, Lily couldn't speak. Then she threw her arms around Keanu, hugging him as tightly as she could. "This is the coolest thing ever," she exclaimed. Keanu laughed, patting her back. "You deserve it, kiddo. Now let's get to work." Over the next few months, Lily became a regular at the studio. She worked closely with the animators, sharing her vision for the film and even helping to design new characters. The process was challenging at times, but Lily thrived in the creative environment. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly alive. Meanwhile, the Bravery Fund continued to grow. Letters and messages poured in from families around the world, sharing stories of how the fund had made a difference in their lives. One particularly touching letter came from a boy named Javier, who had been inspired by Lily's courage to face his own medical challenges. "Your story made me believe I could be brave, too," he wrote. "Now I'm working on my own comic, and I hope one day it will help someone the way yours helped me." When Lily read the letter, she smiled. "It's like a chain reaction," she told Keanu during one of their visits. "One spark leads to another." "That's exactly what it is," Keanu said. "And you're the one who started it." Months later, the animated short film premiered at a small theater in Los Angeles. The room was filled with Lily's friends, family, doctors, and supporters, all gathered to celebrate the next chapter in her incredible journey. As the lights dimmed and the opening credits rolled, Lily couldn't help but feel a mix of nerves and excitement. But the moment Beacon appeared on the screen, her wings of light glowing brightly, Lily knew she had nothing to worry about. The audience was captivated, cheering and clapping at all the right moments. By the time the credits rolled, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. After the screening, Keanu turned to Lily and smiled. "How does it feel to see your story on the big screen?" "Pretty amazing," Lily said, her eyes shining with happiness. "But you know what? I think this is just the beginning." Keanu chuckled. "I couldn't agree more." The success of the film sparked even more opportunities for Lily. A major publishing house offered to turn Beacon, a hero's journey, into a full-fledged series, and Lily, now bursting with ideas, eagerly agreed. She began working on new stories, creating more characters, and expanding Beacon's world. But even as her life became busier and more exciting, Lily never forgot the kids who had inspired her to create in the first place. She continued to visit hospitals, sharing her story and encouraging other young patients to find their own ways to be brave. One day, as Lily and Keanu sat together at a book signing event for the second Beacon comic, Lily turned to him and said, "You know, I used to think superheroes were just in comic books and movies. But now I think they're everywhere." Keanu raised an eyebrow. "Oh yeah? What makes you say that?" "Because of you," Lily said, smiling. "You're a real-life superhero, Keanu. You helped me when I was scared, and you never gave up on me. That's what heroes do." Keanu's eyes softened, and he shook his head. "You've got it all wrong, kiddo," he said. "You're the hero. I just followed your lead." Lily laughed, her heart full of gratitude. "Maybe we're both heroes, then." "Deal," Keanu said, holding out his fist for a bump. Lily bumped it, grinning. "Deal." As the event wrapped up and Lily signed her final book of the day, she looked out at the crowd of smiling faces and felt a surge of hope. Her journey hadn't been easy, but it had brought her here, to a place where she could inspire others, where her voice could make a difference. And as she turned to Keanu, who was busy making a little boy laugh with his impression of Brave Bunny, she realized something important: sometimes, the greatest heroes aren't the ones with capes or powers. Sometimes, they're the people who show up when it matters most. As Lily's life blossomed into something she had once only dreamed of, the world around her continued to be inspired by her bravery. The Bravery Fund had grown into a national nonprofit organization, providing financial support to families with children battling serious illnesses. Its impact was undeniable. Hundreds of kids had received life-changing treatment thanks to the fund, and countless others had found hope through Lily's story. But for Lily, her greatest joy wasn't the fame, the accolades, or even the success of her comic series. It was the letters. Every week, she received stacks of letters from kids, families, and even adults, all sharing how Beacon had helped them find courage during their darkest moments. Some drew pictures of their own superheroes, while others wrote heartfelt messages thanking Lily for showing them that being scared didn't mean they weren't strong. One letter, in particular, stood out. It was from a girl named Hannah, who was undergoing treatment for a rare illness. Her handwriting was shaky, but her words were clear. Dear Lily. I used to think being brave meant you had to be strong all the time, but after reading your comic, I realized it's okay to feel scared sometimes. Beacon showed me that it's not about never being afraid, it's about facing the fear anyway. Thank you for helping me feel like a hero, too. When Lily read the letter, she smiled. Beacon's helping people, just like we hoped, she told Keanu during one of their regular calls. It feels really good. She's not the only one helping people, Keanu replied. You've changed lives, Lily. And you're just getting started. As the years passed, Lily grew stronger, not just physically, but emotionally and creatively. Her health continued to improve, and by the time she was a teenager, she was officially declared cancer-free. It was a moment of overwhelming joy for her and Sarah, a milestone that marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. To celebrate, Keanu took Lily and Sarah on a trip to Hawaii, a place Lily had always wanted to visit. For the first time in what felt like forever, Lily felt completely free, no hospital rooms, no 4 lines, no lingering fear. Just the sound of the ocean, the warmth of the sun, and the laughter of the people she loved most. As they sat together on the beach one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Lily turned to Keanu. Do you ever think about what your superhero name would be? She asked, grinning. Keanu laughed, running a hand through his windblown hair. I'm not sure. What do you think? Lily tapped her chin thoughtfully. I think you'd be the Guardian. You don't have superpowers or a fancy costume, but you're always there when people need you. The Guardian, Keanu repeated, nodding. I like that. But only if I get to be on Beacon's team. You're already on the team, Lily said, nudging him playfully. You're the heart of it. Keanu smiled, his eyes softening. And you're the light, Lily. Always remember that. By the time Lily graduated from high school, she had become a household name, not just for her comics, but for her tireless advocacy on behalf of kids facing medical challenges. She spoke at events, visited hospitals, and even started a mentorship program for young artists who wanted to tell their own stories. But despite her busy schedule, she never forgot where it all began. Every year, on the anniversary of her first meeting with Keanu, she returned to St. Mary's Children's Hospital to visit the kids in the oncology ward. She brought sketchbooks, pencils, and copies of her comics, and she spent hours drawing with the kids, listening to their stories, and reminding them that they were never alone. One year, during one of her visits, a little boy named Alex asked her, "Do you think I could be a superhero too?" Lily smiled and placed a hand on his shoulder. You already are, she said. Being brave enough to keep going, even when it's hard, that's what makes you a hero. Meanwhile, Keanu continued to support Lily in every way he could. Even as his acting career thrived, he remained deeply involved in the Bravery Fund and all of Lily's creative endeavors. The two of them remained close friends, their bond unshakable. I feel like you're my real-life sidekick, Lily joked one day during a brainstorming session for her latest comic. Sidekick? Keanu said, pretending to be offended. I thought I was at least co-captain. Fine, Lily said, laughing. Co-captain. Much better, Keanu said, grinning. Now, let's figure out what happens in the next chapter of Beacon's story. As Lily entered adulthood, she expanded her creative horizons. She wrote novels, illustrated children's books, and even directed an animated feature film based on Beacon. Through it all, she stayed true to the message that had inspired her from the beginning: bravery isn't about being fearless, it's about choosing to face the fear. When asked during an interview what motivated her to keep creating, Lily didn't hesitate. "It's the kids," she said. "Every time I meet someone who says Beacon gave them hope, it reminds me why I started in the first place. If I can help even one person feel a little braver, then it's all worth it." Years later, as Lily stood on the stage of a packed theater accepting an award for her contributions to children's literature, she looked out into the audience and spotted Keanu sitting in the front row. He was clapping loudly, his face glowing with pride. After the ceremony, the two of them sat together backstage, reminiscing about everything they had been through. "Can you believe it's been all these years?" Lily asked, shaking her head in amazement. "It feels like yesterday," Keanu said. "But look at everything you've done, Lily. You've built something extraordinary." "I couldn't have done it without you," Lily said, her voice filled with gratitude. "You showed up when I needed someone the most. You gave me hope. And you gave me purpose," Keanu said softly. "Helping you reminded me why we're all here, to lift each other up." Lily smiled, her heart full. "Well, if that's the case, I think we make a pretty good team." "The best," Keanu agreed, holding out his fist for a bump. As their fists met, Lily thought about how far she had come, from a scared little girl in a hospital bed to a young woman with the power to change lives. She knew her story wasn't over yet, there were still so many adventures to be had, so many lives to touch. And as she walked out of the theater that night, her heart brimming with gratitude and hope, she realized something important: her greatest superpower wasn't her art, her courage, or even her resilience. It was her ability to believe, in herself, in others, and in the infinite power of kindness to change the world. The years continued to pass, but the impact of Lily's story only grew stronger. By the time she was in her mid-20s, Beacon, a hero's journey, had become a global phenomenon. The comic series had been translated into dozens of languages, and the animated film had won multiple awards. But Lily's true legacy wasn't measured in sales or accolades, it was measured in lives. The Bravery Fund had expanded to include scholarship programs for young artists, free therapy sessions for families coping with medical challenges, and even art therapy workshops in hospitals across the world. Everywhere Lily went, she met kids who had been inspired by Beacon to find their own strength. One such encounter happened at a conference where Lily was speaking about the power of storytelling. A shy girl named Priya approached her after the talk, clutching a sketchbook to her chest. "Hi," Priya said nervously. "I just wanted to say thank you. Your comics helped me when I was really scared. And they made me want to start drawing, too." Lily's face lit up. "Can I see your sketches?" she asked. Priya hesitated but eventually handed over her book. As Lily flipped through the pages, she was amazed by the intricate and imaginative worlds Priya had created. "These are incredible," Lily said, smiling warmly. "You've got so much talent." "Really?" Priya asked, her eyes wide. "Really," Lily said. "And if you ever want advice or help, you can reach out to me anytime." "I mean it." Priya's face lit up with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. "Thank you," she exclaimed. "That means so much to me." As Priya walked away, clutching her sketchbook like a treasure, Lily felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was why she had fought so hard, not just for her own survival, but for the chance to make a difference. Meanwhile, Keanu remained a constant presence in Lily's life. Though his acting career kept him busy, he always made time for her, whether it was brainstorming ideas for new projects or simply catching up over coffee. Their bond, forged in the crucible of Lily's toughest days, had only grown stronger with time. One day, as they sat in a cafe in Los Angeles, Keanu brought up an idea that had been on his mind. "You know," he began, stirring his coffee, "we've done a lot of amazing things with the Bravery Fund. But I think it's time to take it to the next level." Lily raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Keanu said, leaning forward, "what if we opened a creative center? A place where kids dealing with tough stuff, illness, loss, whatever it might be, can come and create. We could offer art classes, writing workshops, even animation labs. A space where they can tell their own stories and feel like heroes in their own right. Lily's eyes widened. That's an amazing idea, she said, her mind already racing with possibilities. We could call it the Beacon Creative Center. And we could have a gallery where they can display their work. And a library full of comics and books that inspire them. Keanu grinned. I knew you'd run with it. I love it, Lily said, her excitement growing. Let's do it. Over the next year, Lily and Keanu poured their hearts into making the Beacon Creative Center a reality. They partnered with architects, educators, and mental health professionals to design a space that was as welcoming as it was inspiring. Donations from the Bravery Fund and supporters around the world made the project possible, and soon, the center began to take shape. The grand opening was a day to remember. Kids and families from all walks of life gathered to celebrate, exploring the art studios, writing rooms, and cozy reading nooks. The gallery featured work from young artists, including pieces from Priya and other kids Lily had met along the way. During the opening ceremony, Lily stood on stage with Keanu by her side, addressing the crowd. This center is for all of you, she said, her voice steady but emotional. When I was a kid, drawing helped me feel brave when I didn't know how to be. It gave me a way to tell my story, even when I was scared. My hope is that this place will do the same for you, that it'll remind you that your voice matters and your story deserves to be told. The crowd erupted into applause, and Lily glanced at Keanu, who gave her a proud nod. You did it, he whispered. We did it, Lily corrected, smiling. Over time, the Beacon Creative Center became a beacon in its own right, a place where hope and creativity flourished. Kids from all over the world visited, bringing their unique stories and talents with them. Some went on to become artists, writers, and filmmakers, while others simply found the strength to face their challenges with newfound courage. One day, as Lily was teaching a comic book workshop at the center, she noticed a young boy sitting in the back of the room, nervously clutching a pencil. He reminded her so much of herself that it brought a lump to her throat. What are you working on? She asked, crouching beside him. The boy hesitated, then held up his drawing. It was a sketch of a superhero with a glowing shield and a determined expression. This is S.H.I.E.L.D., he said quietly. She's really strong, but she's also kind. She helps people who are scared. Lily smiled, her heart swelling with pride. I think S.H.I.E.L.D. is going to be an amazing hero, she said. And I think you're pretty amazing, too. As Lily walked through the center that day, watching kids paint, write, and laugh together, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. Her journey had been filled with challenges, but it had also brought her to this moment, a moment where she could see the ripple effect of her story unfolding in real time. When she stepped outside, she found Keanu sitting on a bench, watching the sunset. She joined him, the two of them sitting in companionable silence for a while. You know, Lily said finally, when I was little, I used to think surviving cancer was the end of the story. Like, if I made it through, that would be the happy ending. And now? Keanu asked, glancing at her. Now I know it wasn't the end, Lily said, smiling. It was just the beginning. Keanu nodded, a proud smile spreading across his face. You've built something incredible, Lily. And I know this is only the start of what you're going to do. Lily looked out at the horizon, the colors of the sunset painting the sky. I think so, too, she said softly. Because when you believe in people, and when they believe in themselves, there's no limit to what's possible. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Lily felt a sense of peace and purpose she had never known before. Her journey had taught her that bravery wasn't about never feeling fear, it was about choosing hope, even in the face of uncertainty. And as the stars began to light up the night sky, she knew that her story, and her mission, was far from over. Years later, Lily's name became synonymous with hope, creativity, and resilience. Her journey from a hospital bed to an artist, storyteller, and global changemaker had inspired millions. Yet through all her accomplishments, the comics, the Beacon Creative Center, the awards, and the countless lives she touched, she remained the same person at heart, a girl who had once picked up a pencil to draw because it made her feel brave. Now in her 30s, Lily stood on the stage of a packed auditorium in New York City, addressing an audience that included young artists, families, doctors, educators, and some of the very kids she had once helped through the Bravery Fund. She was being honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award, not for her creative work alone, but for the legacy of kindness and courage she had built over the years. As she stepped up to the microphone, she took a moment to look out at the crowd. In the front row, she saw familiar faces, her mom, Sarah, who had been her rock through it all, Keanu, who gave her a thumbs up and a smile, and dozens of kids and families she had met along the way. "Thank you," Lily began, her voice steady and clear. "When I was 10 years old, I sat in a hospital bed and wondered if I'd ever get to grow up. I didn't know what the future held, and I was so scared that sometimes it felt impossible to keep going. But then, something amazing happened." She paused, her gaze sweeping the room. Someone showed up. Someone who didn't have to be there, but who chose to show me kindness and remind me that I wasn't alone. That person was Keanu Reeves. The audience erupted into applause, and Keanu looked both humbled and amused, giving a little wave. "But what I realized later," Lily continued, "is that it wasn't just about him being a movie star or a generous person. It was about the idea that we all have the power to make a difference in someone else's life. That one act of kindness, one conversation, one moment, can ripple out in ways we can't even imagine." She smiled, her voice growing softer. "That's what Beacon was about. That's what the Bravery Fund was about. And that's what this room full of amazing people is about. It's about believing in each other, even when the world feels scary. It's about choosing hope, over and over again." The crowd sat in rapt attention, hanging on her every word. "So tonight," Lily said, her voice strong, "I want to dedicate this award to all the kids out there who are fighting their own battles. You're stronger than you know, and your stories matter. Keep going. Keep believing. And never forget, you are your own beacon of light." The applause that followed was thunderous, and as Lily stepped back from the microphone, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. Her journey had brought her to this moment, but she knew it was just one chapter in a much larger story. After the ceremony, Lily and Keanu found a quiet corner to talk, away from the bustling crowd. Sarah had joined some of the families for a group photo, leaving the two of them a rare moment alone. "You were amazing up there," Keanu said, handing her a glass of sparkling cider. "Seriously. I think you might have made the whole room cry." Lily laughed, shaking her head. "I think that's your specialty, not mine." "Nope," Keanu said, grinning. "You've officially surpassed me." Lily smiled, looking down at her award. "You know, I used to think that getting through cancer was the hardest thing I'd ever have to do. But I've realized that the real work is what comes after. It's about finding meaning in the hard stuff, and figuring out how to use it to help someone else." Keanu nodded, his expression thoughtful. "You've done that," he said. "In ways most people could only dream of. And I couldn't have done it without you," Lily said, her voice soft. "You were there when I needed someone the most. You believed in me before I even believed in myself." Keanu smiled, his eyes shining with emotion. "It was easy to believe in you, Lily. You've always had that light, it just needed a little help to shine." For a moment, they sat in silence, sipping their drinks and reflecting on how far they had come. Then Lily turned to him with a mischievous grin. "So," she said, "what's next for us, co-captain?" Keanu chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "Oh, I don't know. Maybe we should start working on that animated series you keep talking about. Or how about a live-action Beacon movie? I know a few directors who'd jump at the chance." Lily's eyes lit up. You think so? Absolutely, Keanu said. But only if you let me audition for Brave Bunny. Lily burst out laughing, shaking her head. I think you'd be perfect, she said. But you might have to practice your bunny hop. Done, Keanu said, holding up his hand in mock seriousness. I'll start tomorrow. As the night wound down and the crowd began to disperse, Lily stood on the balcony of the venue, looking out at the city lights. The world felt vast and full of possibility, and she knew that her journey was far from over. Keanu joined her, leaning on the railing beside her. Thinking about the future, he asked. Always, Lily said, smiling. But mostly, I'm just grateful. For all of it, the hard days, the good days, the people who showed up when it mattered. It all led me here. Keanu nodded, a contented smile on his face. You know, he said, if there's one thing I've learned from you, it's that even the smallest spark can light up the darkest night. Lily looked at him, her heart full. And sometimes, she said, you need someone to remind you that the light is already inside you. Together, they stood there in the quiet, the city stretching out before them, the stars shining above. It was a moment of peace, of connection, of infinite possibility. Lily knew that her story wasn't just hers, it belonged to everyone who had ever felt scared, or lost, or unsure. It was a story about courage, kindness, and the power of hope. And as she looked out at the world, she realized that her journey had become so much more than she ever could have imagined. It wasn't just about being a hero. It was about helping others find the hero within themselves.